Good evening. I hope we're on. Welcome to Viewpoint, the show with an attitude. Sometimes it's my attitude, sometimes it's yours, sometimes it's the cameraman. We've got a good show for you tonight, as usual. My guest is Aiyah Josiah-Faeduwor, who is the Director of Operations at OIC of Rhode Island. They still using of Rhode Island? Mm-hmm. Okay. And OIC, in case you didn't know, is Opportunities Industrialization Center, an organization that existed many years ago and is now having a rebirth. So we're going to be talking about a few things, mainly about Mr. Josiah-Faeduwor and his journey through life, at least the latter part of his life. Of course, my co-host is Mr. Barry O'Connor.
How you doing?
And I guess without further ado, why don't we get started?
So Aiyah Josiah-Faeduwor.
Yes.
I always call him by his middle name, however. If you could give us a little bit of a background on where you come from and go into some of your educational journey as you went into higher ed.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I wanted to definitely thank you, the O'Connors, for inviting me on the show and giving me the opportunity. I think it's important that y'all have invested in looking at the younger generations and what they have to offer and providing a platform. So thank you. So yeah, I've had an interesting journey, to be where I am. My parents are originally from Sierra Leone, West Africa. They came here in the 70s. My dad was, he loved education. So he was in college. He got his bachelor's in agriculture, came to the United States to further his education. He was at Clemson, he was at West Virginia University, acquired 5 degrees in total between bachelor's and master's by the time.
What type of degrees?
So he had another bachelor's in science of agriculture. He got and then he just switched, someone in school at Clemson told him, you should be an engineer. He was like, really? So he got his bachelor's in science of electrical engineering, BSc EE, and his master's in engineering at the same time, while he was when he went over to West Virginia University.
How long did that take? About 3 years?
He was in school till he was 41. So it's crazy because he's, in his 60s now, and I'm like, you spent 2/3 of your life in school. Like, that's crazy. That's
what successful people do,
Hey, apparently, and
I went to law school at 42 years old.
At 42.
Yeah.
Well, he scared me a little. Not scared me, but I saw that as one way. When I was in high school, it was like known. My dad's got 5 degrees. I was like, are you going to college? Wasn't even a question. It's like, are you just going to college?
Some big shoes to fill.
A lot of big shoes. But what I always found interesting about my dad and my situation was, even though he had so much school, and he had ingrained that in us all the time. I had summer school every summer in high school, and not because of my grades, it's because he, made us. He insisted.
You
that's
said
a good word.
Us. How many others are there?
So I have 4 other siblings.
And all of them are old enough to go to college and all of that?
So my 2 older brothers didn't graduate from high school. They, we each had our thing. And my oldest brother was into sports and music. My, second oldest brother, he was just a neighborhood guy. Like, everyone loved him. Like, he just didn't have one enemy. So he just was the friendliest one out of all of us. And then me, school was my thing. From teachers to fellow classmates, like, I was there and I was like, I never played sports, but when I was in school, I felt like I was the Kobe. Like, that just was my thing. So
where do you fall in the out of the 5?
So I'm the youngest of the boys. So I got 2 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. So even though we all had our thing, school was never their thing. So they never graduated from high school, actually. So I was the first of the siblings to graduate from high school and the first to go to college. So It was, and you know, a lot of it was
You grew up in Boston?
I grew up in Boston. We actually started off in West Virginia, where my dad was in school. We, you know, started early off in Virginia, and then came to Boston when I was 12. So, you know, and by that time, so that's when I look at my dad and all the school he'd went through. By the time we were, you know, had we gotten that point, he was unemployed. We were in public housing, you know, food stamps, all that, you know, Section 8 housing, all that.
That's a good experience, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there are a lot of people who come into, you know, life and they don't know what it is to eat the cheese that the government used to give away and to deal with food stamps and things like that. They don't have the slightest idea what that's about. Of course, the lower rung, they know because they're living it. But I mean, there are people who have gone to college and you know, made their way through, and a lot of them started along the same road. You know, so it's not something you can't overcome.
Right.
But I maintain that it's good to have had that experience, and it's even better to have gotten out of that experience.
And that's the key. The key is getting out. I look at, you know, my two brothers who, you know, one is still incarcerated, the other, you know, just messed up, you know, when he was in high school and is still carrying that charge. So that's affecting his ability to get employed and do other things. And so I look at their situations and other of my friends who, you know, I went to school with, hung around with, who didn't make it as far as I have or made it in the way that I have. So the key is definitely getting out of it. And I feel I was fortunate enough to take that and it motivated me. You know, I saw it as what I was going through what I was currently dealing with, but there had to be another, you know, another pathway.
What high school did you go to, and then where did you end up as far as pursuing your degree?
Yeah, so I went to John D. O'Brien School of Math and Science in Boston, and so that's an exam school. So the comparable institution would be classical, but not really, because in Boston there are 3 exam schools, and they're each kind of tiered off. And Boston Latin School, like Benjamin Franklin went there, and that school has like a partnership with MIT and Harvard. So students who go there tend to do, you know, significantly better. And the way I scored on the exam, the IC exam, the exam to see what school you got into, I scored high enough to get into Boston Latin. But I knew that the John D. O'Brien was way more diverse. And you know that
diverse in what way? Diverse
in terms of the demographic. There were more various, you know, students from different ethnic backgrounds. Predominantly, Boston Latin School has, you know, mostly white and Asian students, and the Black and Latino population is, you know, almost less than 15%. And so I knew a little bit about each school, and I knew that even though it wasn't like as considered as rigorous, what John D. O'Brien offered was the diversity in thought, which I knew would be a part of what made me learn more, would make me be more, you know, motivated to get through school and to get more from it. So,
given where you were being raised, or what some of the struggles or challenges that you had in your life, what did you have anything that you needed to overcome? I think it's important for our audience to know, and obviously young people, to know that they're not the only ones possibly going through what they're going through. Were there any challenges that you needed to overcome as a young person? Yeah,
I mean, you know, and so after going to that school, John D. O'Brien, you know, it was recommended by a teacher who had a strong relationship with to apply to Brown. At that point, I didn't even know, you know, I couldn't name all the Ivy League schools, you know, off the top of my head. And so that was kind of a huge statement for her to make, that she believed in me to that extent. And I think that you know, kind of was indicative of the experience I had throughout school. And I think that, you know, what was tough was in school, you're put into a box. And some students, luckily or fortunately, because some of the ways that they were raised, you're put into a box that allows you to kind of, you know, get by and, you know, teachers, leaned, there were times when I should have been getting suspended for some just, acting like a kid does. But because my grades were okay, because they knew what type of, house I had what type of parents I had at home, they, kind of let me, fly by with certain things that other students didn't. So I always...
Did you eventually stop sliding and doing those things?
Not at all. I just, eventually got to a place in college where that stuff was kind of more, and that's the thing that I always felt like, my experience was, I didn't have the same struggle in school that my brothers had. I would even say, even though we were in these poorer neighborhoods, people knew, there's always the kid who's like not about that life, who gets, let go, gets given a pass, and so I was never like drawn, like they didn't try to recruit me for the gangs.
You think it has something to do with having a dream early? Because a lot of young people don't have a dream. In my day, most of the people from my community, and then later it became even more so in the minority community, in the black community, that they didn't think they were going to live that long.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be gone by 21, and I was included in that. And ironically, I was in Vietnam when I was 21.
Yeah.
So I made it back, but a lot of people, it promotes giving up.
Yeah, it does.
So.
Well, I mean, I think for me, I wouldn't say I had necessarily a dream figured out. I didn't have, an idea of what was possible. Like I said, with a place like, Brown, I didn't even know that was, a possibility. I, kind of gravitated towards what was there. And there were things about my personality that I liked certain things. I was into certain things that people were around me weren't into, so I knew I was a little different. But, and Barry's a perfect, testament to that. It was always those around me who, who had clearly been through more, who, reached out and, made it very clear that they were willing to show me something or teach me something. And something about maybe being a middle child, something about having the brothers I had, I knew that I needed mentors. I knew I needed someone who, could tell me or recommend what's best, and then I would follow up on it. And I think that is one of the things that, separates a lot of, I've worked with youth, that separates a lot of kids from each other, is that some, if you tell them something, they're gonna actually take it to heart. They are going to actually follow up. And not all of it's just, it's inherently who you are. Some of it's the experiences you've learned to trust people, where other people have experiences where they can't trust as easily. And it takes an individual more willing to go the distance to bring them to that place. But my experiences led me to being more likely to trust folks and seek out folks who could mentor and show me the way. And I think that's what kind of, got me along to the point where I was old enough, mature enough, wise enough to have the dream that I started to have.
Did you have some struggles academically and or socially when you went to Brown University?
Oh man, my Brown experience was one of the best experiences I've ever had, and it wasn't all easy though. I think day one it was just a culture shock. I came a kid from Dorchester, through and through, baggy jeans, So in fact, my Facebook name, and this was a big thing at the time, was Aiyah Hot Fire, because that was just kind of a fun nickname I had, but I didn't even understand the implications of coming into a place that had individuals who looked at the world so differently and saw that as something that I really jokingly was about, but were a little bit more critical, maybe didn't understand. So my first couple months, it was just struggling to kind of fit in, struggling to understand the cultures of some of my classmates, and definitely the difficulty in the classroom, feeling confident enough to speak or to, feel that this is a good essay, because the way I learned, how to write essays seems very different from the structures that some of my classmates had. So I definitely, when I first came in, noticed there was such a huge, culture gap, exactly, academic gap, and I think I was able to take advantage of it because I threw myself into it. I joined what's considered what is a historically white fraternity. I mixed in with different people. I was a part of different things that I came into Providence. I was one of those, brown students who definitely didn't fit in any box. And
that's been the mode for many, many years. When I was back in the days when I was in my 20s, being an activist in the community, we always tried to get the best to participate. So I remember one time going up to Brown to talk to the Brown students to try to get them motivated in helping the community. Yeah. And what I found was what you just stated. The majority of them never came off the hill.
It's tough.
Matter of fact, we were invited to this meeting by I forget what the name of the black organization was at that time, and there was a gentleman who was very, very active when I was a kid, and we both arrived there thinking that they were going to tell us what they were doing, and they didn't have anything for us.
Right.
So we said, well, what are we doing here? I thought you were going to tell us what you're doing and what we could help you with, and they had no idea.
Yeah. And
that's when I found out, and I have to say that was in the, early 70s. Yeah.
It's scary that now, times haven't changed too much. And I think a lot of it is, as you said, in terms of the people who've never had, have never experienced food stamps or that side of things, Providence was a very foreign thing to a lot of people, who've come from different places. So whether it's just because it's a city where you don't know anybody and maybe just that aspect of it, or just the type of city that, it may be perceived as. So I think a lot of it is just not knowing, but I think a lot of it is also having someone to bring you down the hill. So I will pitch one part. If there are any Brown students watching, I definitely would, encourage each of you, any of you, all of you, to make it a conscious effort to get off the hill and to do something in the community. Reach out to me. I'm at the OIC of Rhode Island. I'm more than willing to support any type of, community event or anything that I could support any student group with getting involved in the community, because I think it's essential, and it was the reason why I grew the way I did through school and the reason why I stayed here in Providence. And even if students don't stay here in Rhode Island, but you need to have that real part of an experience while you're in college, because you can easily get into the work world and miss an opportunity to go and volunteer or go and tutor or go and do all these things that you realize later that are so important. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So you graduated in the year of, what year did you graduate?
So I graduated in 2013. I had a grade
degree
with a degree in public policy, and my focus was education policy. I actually came in a mechanical engineer, but after a semester of kind of just doing work for doing work's sake, I realized that I was passionate about seeing why I was one of the few people like myself in this whole class of engineers. And so finding out how to fix the problem of why I was there became more important than addressing the problems that were on my table.
So you're continuing to grow professionally.
Oh, no doubt.
And that started with the college advising corps, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
If you could talk about that a little bit and then your journey to where you are today.
Yeah. As I was nearing, graduating, it was kind of tough to figure out where I was going to go next. And, I knew that I had, learned about education policy, but I didn't have, enough significant experience in it to really feel like I can go into that field and do work. So I heard about an AmeriCorps program called the College Advising Corps that placed AmeriCorps members in high schools in Providence, or in Rhode Island. I was like, this is the perfect opportunity. So upon graduating, I took up the College Advising Corps. It's tough. It's a AmeriCorps position, so the pay was non-existent, but it was a really real experience. I was put in a office and told that my caseload is the 1,200 students here at Mount Pleasant High School, and my job is to support the 300 seniors and the 280 or so juniors with going to college and figuring out the college process. As a recent grad, it's a lot. You have a caseload of about 1,000, and you've got to make a real impact in a school that's not getting the support that it needs outside of me. So it was a challenging first year, but I learned a lot. I learned, one, that you can't do it all, and you can't put that expectation on yourself. But the next year I was at CCRI, and that's where we met, and I further learned how you can't handle it on your own, but was able to learn how to reach out and get support and collaborate. And so I think I was twice as, 3 times as effective at CCRI while doing a little bit less of the work on my personal self, because I realized the importance of having connections and being able to connect resources and be able to put students in connection with other places and bring other individuals to the table. I mean, I was most proud of being able to set up that event for undocumented students with Martha Martinez with the Cesar Chavez Fund, because we were able to collaborate for the students at CCRI who are undocumented and needed money for tuition with an organization that does that in the community, but there wasn't a direct partnership. So I was glad we were able to bring that together, and a lot of other things.
So you've had some successes in doing that, and it was very rewarding, I know.
Oh, definitely.
That experience of being the only one or one of 2 out of a class of 60 or whatever, and also in public policy, like volunteer work like a school board or things like that. Being the only one, I've had that experience throughout my life. I was the only person of color on the school board here in Providence for a while. When I went to law school, I was one of 2 blacks in the course, and some of those classes had 60 students in it, so. It's a recurring thing to be one of a few, and it increases the burden that you have to do other things.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a balance, I'm right now, in addition to being at the OIC, I'm also on the board of the Millennial Professional Group of Rhode Island, and that, commitment, is one of those, and I've always tried to say I'd rather be on less boards and less groups and just be more impactful within the ones that I'm in.
That's good. There's another lesson that you learned. When I first started my activism after I got out of the military, I looked around the community and there were these boards, that they wanted people to participate in. And I remember one black man, who was on 20 boards. And I said to myself, how can he be effective on 20 boards? I mean, by the time you get through going to all these meetings, you don't have time to eat.
Right.
So it is something to learn to conserve the time that you have so that you can be effective, as opposed to just being all over the board and not getting much done.
Yeah, this is very true. And I mean, it's about, you got to be able to manage your time. You've got to be able to allow yourself to be, relatively, it feels like you're being selfish, but it's really not that. It's that whole concept of if you're on a plane and it crashes and the airbags come down, you put on yourself first before you. That's not a selfish act in doing that. It's making sure you're capable of helping anyone else. So I can't, come back on Monday and be effective if I'm working Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to the same capacity I work all through the week. You've got to be able to figure out, and that's something that, a lot of, young people, a lot of millennials, are struggling with figuring out, but you've got to figure out what works for you. I keep a planner, and people, when I pull out my planner, look at me like, what is this? It's color coded. It's all this stuff. But that's how I, can make it to your show and make it to, the other commitments I may have before or after in a way that's not like I can't double book. So I think it's important to know what works for you and how you can, utilize your energy in a way that's productive and can fit for your lifestyle.
Could you speak to, have you noticed, what I get the greatest joy from is a lot of students come to me and say thank you all the time, and it really makes me uncomfortable. I think that the greatest thank you that I get is seeing them walk across the stage when they graduate. Has that happened to you yet in your young career, that you helped someone and then they've gone on to graduate from college?
The fact that you get thanked, and I've seen what you do, and I've seen the way you work. I mean that it's work that deems thanks, and I thank you, for the opportunity that you've been able to provide for me. So that's who you are, and I think that when that is who you are, you don't do it for the thanks. So when it comes, it's uncomfortable because one, it's surprising, because you're thinking why wouldn't I do that? You came to me with a problem. Why wouldn't I, as someone who may have some resources, at least has 5 minutes of my time to help you out? So I definitely, feel you on the discomfort. And I've been working with students in different capacities since about my sophomore year of college. So I have my first, students I've started working with my sophomore year are about to complete their freshman year of college. And it's this three young women, and they went to schools all over. One's at Denison, one's in school in Atlanta. She's gonna kill me if she sees this. I didn't remember. And one's at BU. And their trajectory, it's inspiring, because you feel connected every piece. I remember when you were a young knucklehead running around the summer to the point where you were frantic, like, I'm not gonna take my SATs or care about them, but I know I stressed how important it was, and then you were glad that you had the score that barely made you eligible for whatever scholarship. And so when you see that whole process, it's just like, I'm not even like, I'm waiting for them to be at my age and doing things like this, and I'm just like, it's just like, I feel that I can die happy now because I know the success that the kids who I've been involved with. I got a long way to go. I got a long way to go, but I know that I can be, hopefully not, knock on wood, broke and just like in a, alley somewhere, but knowing that the youth that I've worked with and that I've been able to touch in a very large way, are going to be doing great things, and it's just that's peace of mind right there. So I think there's a lot to the work, and I've seen some successes, and I'm still pushing, and I want to see some of them do a lot better. But yeah, it's incredibly rewarding just knowing that. Yeah.
I can tell you, Bells Benton, who was a huge part of my uncle's life, a very good friend. He was impactful on me. Just one day I said to him, I can't take a day off. I feel uncomfortable taking that day off. That's the one day that a student's going to walk through my door, and I'm not going to be there. Yeah. He said, what service are you providing if you're exhausted? So it goes back to your point of actually being somewhat selfish, even though some people may think it's selfish, but working towards providing quality services rather than a quantity of services.
Exactly.
Now, how long do you expect to stay around here? Are you planning to go anywhere?
Well, with the work I'm doing with the OIC, I think it's building to be impactful, and it's work that I'm connected to doing, and it's for the community that I'm in, and the Millennial professional group. What we're really trying to do is build a Rhode Island that is there for young people who are trying to make this their home. So from everything from, considering housing, am I going to buy a house? If I'm going to buy a house, I want it to be a solid decision. My dad spent all 41, he was still in school, he amassed a massive amount of college debt, and that scared me. And so I think about every financial decision I make with, such seriousness because of that experience. So when I think about staying somewhere, I'm like, any place where, the cost of living is ridiculous, I'm just like, I don't know if that's for me. So, and I think what we're looking to do with that group and what we're able to do is, find out about the opportunities out there so young people who are choosing to make this their home do it in a way that allows you to be stable and solid for a long time.
Well, I think we could do another half hour with you. Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time, and I'm really glad to meet you. I think you've hit on some great points and be of value to some of the youth around here, and hopefully some of them will watch this and know that it can be done.
Yes,
but you got to do it in a certain way, which is you got to commit yourself to it. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you as always, man. Appreciate it.
Keep up the great work.
Coming too. We'll be back next show, and hopefully you'll join us again. Hope you've learned something. Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the buggies bite.
Good night, Malcolm.